It's great to see you here that could make it live. And there's some names that I recognize and some that I don't. So welcome everyone. And yes, today is going to be, I think, quite an interesting webinar. It's going to be slightly different to our normal ones, where there's going to be a bit of an interactive session where you are actually going to be doing something and not just sitting and listening to me or asking questions. So yes, without further ado, as per usual, I'm going to switch my camera off and then we can go into the opening meditation. So just while I do that, make yourself comfortable. Deep breath in and slowly breathe out. Close your eyes. And as you breathe in, just breathe in this beautiful light energy. You can see it as sparkles of sunlight or starlight. Breathe it in. And then as you breathe out any heaviness, any sorrow, anything that's negative that you feel you are carrying with you today. Breathe it out and visualize that energy being transformed into those sparkles of light. And then breathe in that lightness again. And just do this for a few seconds. And while you're doing this, take your focus down into your heart space, your heart center. And feel that absolute unconditional love you have for all beings of nature, be they animal beings or plant beings or mineral beings, or even human beings. Just feel that beautiful love that you have for life at this time, at this place. And then consciously send that love out. So you can visualize it as streams of the rose gold light, connecting you with all those other beings, and connecting you with the oneness of all beings, the oneness of life. And then through those streams of connection, those streams of light, beams of light, feel the support and love coming back to you. The support of that life force, the support of the divine in nature, the support of any of your guides, be they animal or angels. And just feel that beautiful energy surrounding you, keeping you warm and safe. And then see that energy including everyone that is on this call and all the beings that are present with you, especially the animals that are with you this evening or today. And know that you are in a real safe space to explore this realm of interspecies connection and interspecies communication. So just breathe that sense of warmth and love and security in, and let it settle into all the cells of your body. And then become aware of the soles of your feet on the ground beneath you. Become aware of your body. And take a deep breath in, slowly breathe out. And when you are ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, so thank you everyone. I hope you're feeling relaxed and supported and connected after that. Now, communicating with wildlife in captivity, it sounds like quite a harsh subject in some ways, because those of us who believe in the freedom of all animals find it difficult to swallow that there are so many of our beautiful wild animals in captivity. And some of them are in, real good places, sanctuaries for life, where they get absolute love and care. And for them, it's a blessing to be there. And then there are others that might be in zoos or education centers where it may not be such a blessing. And then there are others still that are literally being used for commercial purposes. And that certainly is not a blessing for them to be there. And they are definitely trapped in that situation for whatever reason. So today what we're going to do is explore all those different energies and what they mean and how you can recognize them, and what you as an individual can do to help an animal in a situation that is not ideal. So I'm going to start off with talking about two incredible experiences that I had communicating with animals in captivity. And the most famous story, of course, is the one with Spirit, where Anna Breitenbach and myself went to communicate with Spirit, who was in a place called Jakani here in South Africa, which was a big cat. I wouldn't say sanctuary at the time, because it wasn't really a sanctuary. And one of the reasons why I'm not in the very famous video of Anna communicating with Spirit is because of the practices at that time, which I'm pleased to say have changed. But at the time, they were definitely trading with wildlife, and there was cub petting, cub handling of some of the big cats there. So I was very, very aware of being involved in the anti-cub petting and trading of wildlife campaigns, and I did not want to be associated with that. But I was there, and Anna and I both did the communication with Spirit, who was, if people don't know the story, I'll just talk about it briefly, where he was cowering in his night shelter all the time and wouldn't come out into the open enclosure. And all it took for us to do is to communicate to him with absolutely no judgment, with absolutely no pity or sorrow or shame, and to say to him, what an incredibly beautiful, brave, strong, handsome animal you are. And the one information that we received from him, the most important thing, was that he didn't like his name, which at that time was Diablo, meaning devil. And of course he didn't like that name. Who would want to be called something that has such negative connotations? And so we convinced the person who was looking after the place at the time, who had a great connection with Spirit, to change his name, and the name he chose was Spirit, which was just so apt. And it was an almost immediate change. Jörg, his I want to say owner, but wasn't owner, carer, communicated to him and realized that this was such a real thing. And it's a very moving video if you want to search for it on YouTube. It is incredibly, every time we watch it, even though I was there and I know the story, we always want to burst into tears, because almost the following day, Spirit came out of his cage and started exploring and started really feeling his true self. And all it took was to be seen by someone who didn't see him for only his circumstances, for someone who wasn't scared of him, for someone who really just loved him unconditionally for his true self. And once he was seen and the message was given to those who could change his circumstance, then he changed his behavior and became almost a completely different animal. One thing that was very good that came out of, well, there was quite a few things that came out, good things that came out of that experience. Obviously, for Spirit, that he could express himself more freely. But also, we managed to get Chakani to change their financial sponsors or the financial partners to the people who own Birds of Eden and Monkeyland in Plettenberg Bay area. And they have a very, very ethical policy on the handling and the trading of wildlife. So through the efforts of Anna and myself, after that experience, we actually did manage to change, the outcome of the lives of all those animals that were being kept at Chakani at that time. So that in itself was an incredible achievement. So, that is the kind of thing that we can, by using interspecies communication, we can make such a difference to the lives of an individual animal and to actually a whole park full of animals in captivity. Another positive story that I want to share with you is, and some of you may have heard it, but it's always a good one to share, is Ina and Aries. Ina is the lioness on the left and Aries is the lion. And they are at Drakenstein Lion Park, Lion Sanctuary, which is one of the most ethical sanctuaries, I'd say, in South Africa. There's not many of them. There's only about 3 or 4 that I know of. And it is incredibly difficult for strange lions to be introduced to each other. So Ina and Aries were both rescued from separate circuses in Romania, but under very similar circumstances, although they never knew each other. And they were different ages as well. And Paul Hart, who runs the sanctuary and founded the sanctuary, felt that because of their circumstances, they would relate to each other and would be able to accept each other. So they were placed together. There is a small kind of time of Boma bonding, but then when they were placed together, and what was interesting was that Aries, although he was a much, much bigger lion than Ina, was completely fearful and intimidated by Ina. So whenever they got fed, Ina would immediately rush in and steal his food and want to, really attack him before, if he tried to get his own food. And this was just every time it happened. And it was going on for about 2 weeks that Aries hadn't been able to eat. And that was when Paul contacted me and asked for my help. And so what I did, I didn't even go to the sanctuary because it's quite far away from where I lived and I didn't have time. So I worked with their photographs. And first of all, I communicated to Ina, or with Ina, and just to feel in the reasons why she was so dominant, being so dominant over Aries, despite the fact that he was so much bigger than her. And she said to me, the information that I received from her was that she really wanted a strong mate. She wanted someone who was strong and able to stick up for himself. And if he didn't, then she was just going to dominate him all the time. And so I thought, wow, okay, that's understandable. But I also explained to her that this is her last chance of being with another lion for the rest of her life, possibly. Because if she didn't accept him, then she might well be alone. And because Darkenstein gives sanctuary for life. And then I communicated with Aries, and I explained to Aries the same situation about them needing to, accept each other. And he, of course, was completely intimidated by Ina. And so I told him how big and brave and strong he was. I explained that Ina had been in the same situation that he was, so she wasn't any more fierce than him, and that he just needs to be brave and strong and stand up to her. And the way I communicated that to him was by visualizing him doing exactly what I was saying, visualizing him standing by his food and not moving off. And then I'd visualize Ina backing down. And then the ultimate visualization was the two of them being tolerant of each other and then eventually bonding. And it was amazing because it was literally the last day that they were going to attempt to feed again. And if she was going to not let Aries eat, they would have been separated. And of course, I should never doubt, but they did exactly what I'd asked them to do. And this was probably 5 years ago that this happened. And still now they are as close as ever, and they look after each other, and they are incredibly happy together. So there again is another example of how interspecies communication can really help animals that are in a captive situation for life. Now, the fact that I support Drakenstein is because I know their ethics. I know what they stand for. They rescue lions that have been in really horrendous circumstances, like circuses, traveling circuses, or breeding camps. And they are completely intolerant of, there's no ways they would ever trade with their animals or breed with them. Although they did have a little bit of an oopsie, in case people know, where one of the males that was believed to have had a vasectomy actually produced 3 cubs. So these things do happen, but knowing the ethics and the morals behind it, I know that this was a genuine mistake. And I just also want to share with you the story of how I got introduced to the energy of the captive breeding of lions. And I know I'm focusing on lions during this call, and it's just because I know them more than any other animal, and I've been more involved in their plight. But this would probably, I could be talking about most other animals in captivity as well. So whatever animal you choose to work with or are passionate about, the same rules apply. Now, I had been invited by someone to come and meet her lions. And this was when I was just at the beginning of my career. I'd been living in the UK for a few years, and I had just come to South Africa to do my first workshops in South Africa, actually. And this was in about 2004, it must have been. And I had met with Linda Tucker. So I'd started getting involved with the White Lion Trust, although I didn't know the extent. I was quite ignorant to the extent of the canned hunting and the lion breeding trade. So when this woman, who seemed like a very nice sort of spiritual person invited me to go and see her lions, I said, yes, great. So I went and I met her at the Lion Park in Johannesburg. And it was a place that I'd been to as a child. And I didn't really think too much about it. And when I went in there, I felt a bit strange and I couldn't put my finger on it. And then she invited me to meet the cubs. And I got taken into an enclosure with all these sort of about 3-month-old baby lions, maybe 2 to 3 months old. And they were climbing all over me. And it was quite a surreal experience, but I can't say it was pleasant. And then I left, and I remember sitting in my car outside the entrance and thinking, and I suddenly felt violently ill. And I thought, oh my God, what is this? What has just happened? And I phoned Linda Tucker and I told her where I'd just been, and I said, is this a place that does, the captive breeding and the canned hunting? Although stupidly, I mean, I should have realized that it was one of the biggest places because of the fact that they had about 5 or 6 cubs that had been supposedly rejected by their mother, which is the story that they tell people. But it just all felt completely off to me. And Linda confirmed that, yes, of course, the man who owned it was the head of the White Lion Breeding Association, which was led directly into the canned hunting industry. And of course, since then, that industry has exploded to the most horrendous proportions, where it's even, going into farming lions for the bone trade. So I'm not going to get into all that horror because as you know, most of you who've been following me, we've been working with that issue over the last month. And there have been wonderful developments just through our prayers and the work of the coalition of organizations. But moving on here, so what I want to speak about and let you think about today is, what do you do when you are faced with an animal or that is in captivity, or even a situation that you have cause for concern? Why are you visiting the animals in captivity, or why have they come to your attention? So how do we explore further? So first of all, as people, some of my students here will know, the first thing we always do is send that feeling of absolute unconditional love to the animal, or even to the situation if it's not a specific animal that you're working with. And then you sit in that space of connection and you take note of the very first feeling that you get. And is it a good, positive feeling where you're feeling drawn into that space? Or is it a negative, uncomfortable, maybe even a sick feeling that you receive when you are connecting? That very, very first feeling. Now that'll be your gauge whether something is off, something is wrong. While you're in that space, if you don't know already, maybe ask for the reason that this place or this animal or this situation is being brought into your awareness. Don't get caught up in the feeling of it, especially if it is a negative feeling. So what Janine reminded me of, and that she thinks about so often, when people come across an animal that they feel very sad about, or they connect into the sadness and the trauma that's in that animal, it's easy to get stuck into that. And we don't want to get stuck into that when we want to help the animal. We want to acknowledge it, recognize it, and then step out and say, how can I help you? what can I do to help the situation? Now, you're either asking the animal themselves, and they will be able to tell you whether it is just sending prayers and visualizations, or whether it is spreading the awareness, or whether it is just do some research into this facility, speak to people about it. Or it might be an enrichment thing. You know, what do you need? Do you need more shelter? Do you need more water? Is your food correct? Are you looked after well? What else do you need? And this has come up quite a lot for me, especially from my students all over the world, when they come across zoos that are doing very, very good education and awareness work, but there are circumstances where some of the animals are kept in really small spaces or are not being looked after as well as they could. So how can you help that situation in an establishment that is not necessarily meaning to be cruel, but perhaps doesn't have the resources or doesn't have the time or the staff to, give that animal the ideal care? You can approach that zoo if if you are the kind of person that will speak out, because some people would rather just send the visualizations, and that's okay, but it works so much better if there's action with the visualization. So, if we want to make a difference, speak out, but also work with that sacred activism, that sacred action where you work with the support of nature, the support of the divine, to get your message across to the right people. And that's something that we've been doing with Parliament over the lion bone trade. We have been speaking out, and then we have been praying and visualizing and clearing the energy so that the information reaches the right person, the people that can make a difference. So that is probably the key to working with establishments like that. So always trust the information that comes to you from the animal. And, of course, that is always the most important thing. Trust the very first thing that comes to you. Remember, it can be so quick and so fleeting. Write it down when you're doing this communication, because that gets it out of your head and onto the page and into reality. And it can stop you from doubting, stop you from thinking about it. And remember how the information comes to you. It might just be a feeling. It might be an image or a word, a smell or a physical feeling. So remember not to discard anything that comes to you when you are in that space of connection and communication with that animal or with that situation. So it's about being very aware of what you are receiving when you're in that connected state. Always end with a thank you after, for the animal for helping you to understand the situation better, or giving you advice about where there and what you can do to help. And then once the communication has ended, do the work, do the research if you need to on the place or the situation. Just see what you can do with the information that the animal has given you, what that communication and connection has given you. And just a reminder that it's always important to be true to and trust the first feeling, no matter what people are saying to you. So, for example, when I was being led by this woman who was a follower of my work and, I thought was quite a, conscious being, and I trusted her without actually feeling into her. I mean, obviously, I've learned a huge amount since those, sort of 15, 16 years since then. And I just went with her and I believed what she was telling me. But when I was in with the lions, I was feeling something completely different. So, that in itself would be a clue to that something not's right here. Start asking the question. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where, you're seeing people cuddling pets, or, ask cuddling cubs, ask the handlers, what's going on here? What happens to these cubs? And they'll say, oh, they're going to be released to the wild. But they won't be. That is completely, it just will not happen in South Africa, certainly in South Africa. And, don't be scared of asking those questions, because it's also sometimes the volunteers and the handlers they don't want to know the truth. So start putting doubt in their minds. I'm not saying go and support these places in order to change them. I'm saying that if you find yourself in a situation like that without meaning to, that is the time when you can actually start asking the questions. If you're working over a distance, you can email the owners, ask the questions, phone them up if you feel strongly about that. If you don't, just spread the word, just spread the word about do not support this place. Or even better, find the places that you believe to be true and ethical, and tell people to rather support only those places. So that's a very good way of not being sort of targeted as being liable, rather just always support the ethical places and share them, and tell people not to support places that breed lions for commercial use. Actually, or to breed animals in captivity is a very dubious kind of practice in itself, I believe. There are exceptions to the rule, and that would be, if I think of someone off the top of my head, there's Tiki Hayward Trust in Zimbabwe, where she breeds endangered species and she releases them as soon as they are able to fend for themselves. She releases them back into the wild. And that is probably the only, and I know her, and she is truly ethical and is really doing very good and very tough work in a very tough environment. But that is why you need to start working with your intuition and with the communication when you come across animals in captivity. Remember that you can communicate over any distance, so with a photograph, so you don't have to go into these places in order to communicate with the animals. And also know that if you can't do anything physically, you can work with the transformational energy and intention, which is what I was talking about with prayer and visualizations. And really trust that you can make a difference and transform that negative energy of trauma and sadness into a positive one of freedom and release and joy. Remember that, to really focus on the joy of being able to communicate with these animals, the joy of being able to assist their circumstances, even if it's just working in the background and holding them in love and just hearing them. Remember, with Spirit, that's not, he wasn't in the most terrible of situations, but remember, just by being heard, it transformed his behavior and it transformed his life. So I've seen that with all animals, even, domestic animals that aren't being heard or aren't being understood. The moment somebody hears them and understands them, they change and their whole energy changes. And that in itself is a joy of this work. So remember, I always say, love, respect, and joy are the keys to accurate and really helpful communication with an animal or another species. Okay, so now we're going to do the work. So I'm going to show you 3 photographs of 3 different lionesses. And I want you I will guide you in to each photograph, to connecting with each photograph. And then I want you to write down in the chat. So I think, Janine, you can switch the chat on now. The very first feeling that comes to you. Don't think about it. Don't get caught up in the visual image of the animal, because they all, even though they're all lionesses, they do look very different. Because of the photographs and the way they've been taken. So don't get caught up in the visual. Just have a glance at them and then close your eyes and send that absolute unconditional love to that animal. And I have asked permission to use their photographs for this purpose. So you can feel easy about connecting with them. And then write the very first word that comes to you, a feeling, a sensation, and then let it go. And if anything else comes to you, I'm not going to give you a long time to do this because I don't want you to think about it. So let's see, and then I'm going to tell you the circumstances of each lioness and where they are, and then we can see if that matched with your feeling. This is not a test. This is just a experience to recognize the different energies of different situations. Okay. So this is a first lioness. They're all white lions, by the way. So this is a lioness. So just take a deep breath in. Slowly breathe out and then go back to your heart space and send that absolute unconditional love that you have for all animals, for all beings, that feeling that you have for the most beloved being in your life. Send that to her. Thank her for being here. Thank her for allowing us to work with her. And then feel what comes. Don't think about it. Just feel what comes. And then type the word or the message into the chat. If you want to, you can ask a question. Ask her about the environment that she's in. Feel into the intentions around the people that look after her, the people that own the land. And then as you ask that question, as I even verbalize it, what do you feel? Okay. So thank you for that. Great. I can see all those messages coming in. So now I'm going to ask you to disconnect from her. Thank her again for communicating. And then we're going to move on to the next lioness. So just take a moment to really disconnect from this particular lioness. And then we'll move on to the next one. Don't worry if you haven't typed anything in. It's quite okay. This is just an experience and a very personal one as well. So there's no need for you to share. And if you're not used to this, it might you might feel like you're not really confident of getting the energy, but I'm just showing you the possibilities here. Okay, so this is the next lioness. Thank you, everyone. So again, just take a deep breath in. Make sure you're completely disconnected from that first picture, the first animal that you saw, that we connected with. And take your focus to this lioness that's on the screen now. And really just, look into her eyes, focus on this particular individual's energy as opposed to the one before. And send that feeling of absolute unconditional love to her. Thank her. Love her. And then see what comes. I'm not going to give you the names, although I don't know the names of all of them. I don't know all of the lines personally. So I'm giving you this experience because you might come across a situation where you need to work with an animal without the names. So you're working with the photograph of this particular animal, which is only that particular animal. Remember, the photograph is a tool to connect with that particular signature frequency of the animal. Okay, thank you for those of you that wrote in the chat. So thank this beautiful lioness for connecting with us, and just end the communication. So disconnect with absolute gratitude. And then take your focus back into your own body, your own physical body. A good trick or tool to use when you want to feel completely disconnected, or when you want to make sure you have disconnected to the animal, is to visualize yourself in a bubble of light, a cocoon of light, and visualize the animal in a separate cocoon of light, so that you really are, again, just focusing on your own energy rather than feeling into her energy. So just make sure you're disconnected from her so that you can connect with the next lioness that's offered to help us. And there she is. So again, I know it's unusual to work with 3 animals so quickly, but everything is possible, as I always say. So breathe, deep breath in, deep breath out. Feel your feet connected to the ground, and then go into your heart space. Center that absolute unconditional love and gratitude. And see what she's telling you. Okay, now slowly start disconnecting from this beautiful being. Thank her for sharing in her energy. Thank her for allowing us in and being here with us, holding the space. Again, just take a very deep breath in. Feel your feet firmly on the ground. Become aware of your body and your surroundings and your own energy, your own specific energy frequency. Okay, well, thank you everyone for that. So now I shall reveal all that I know about these beings. And so the very first lioness, I don't know personally. She is in the Lion Park in Johannesburg. Well, they've moved out of Johannesburg now. But she is in a place where they do breed and they do trade with lions. So most of you picked up a heaviness and a sadness in her. And, you know, that in itself could mean one thing, but when you compared it to the others, that's when the interesting recognition of the different energies come into play. Now, the next lioness is Zyra, who is at Drakenstein Sanctuary. Now, I know her, and I met her when she was just only about a couple of weeks old. She had been rescued from one of these dreadful breeding camps, and fortunately, Paul was able to take her and her sister. Unfortunately, her sister died of a genetic defect, and you can see, you know, why I said don't focus on the visual, because you can see actually her eyes, although, you know, because of the interbreeding that happens in captive lions, and specifically white lions, you get anomalies like a bit of a squint, which she has. Now, that doesn't mean that she's in a bad place. So that's why I asked you to ignore the visual and just focus on the energy. So she is relatively happy and safe. There were a few things that people said that I could relate to. Elizabeth, you said she was climbing up on a structure. Most people felt a much lighter energy from her than from the first lioness. So well done. That's brilliant. Really, really well done. And then, of course, this is our beloved Zyra, who is at the Global White Lion Protection Trust, roaming free, a wild lioness. She was born in the Johannesburg Zoo. She was she is Mara's daughter, who was the founder lioness of the project. But, you know, Linda led her into freedom with her two brothers and her mother. And she has since had her own 3 cubs. If you follow the White Line Project, you'll know her. And Laura, you do know her because you've met her. So well done. And yes, there is a freedom, and someone picked up with her that she's in a new environment. Now, that is quite interesting because the environment that she's in is still the same that she's been in for many years, but there's a new element, as in a new male has come into her territory that she is still getting used to, her and her daughter Nebu. So that could be the trying to accept the new space. So the new space of having another male in her territory, which is quite a difficult thing for her to adapt to, but it is going well so far. So really, I think all of you that had wrote something here could recognize the different energies. So that is what it's about. That is what this work is really about, just feeling and sensing in. We could, of course, go so much deeper. You could spend an hour with each of these animals and find out what you could do, find out their circumstances, what they need from you, what you need from them. So, and again, of course, it's you as an individual, how you receive communications, what you need from the animal at that time, and what they might need from you at that time. It's all very individual. So, if you want to work with them in your own time, I think you'd be welcome to. Remember to always ask permission before you start a communication. And you can recognize if you have that permission when the information starts flowing. If you're not sure about whether you have permission or not, that's when often there's just a complete block. And that could be just because they are not in the space to be communicative, or it could be that you are not in the space to communicate. Perhaps you need to just still your mind a bit more, or go and do something fun rather than trying too hard or being too serious about it. Remember those little tricks of the trade, so to speak. Okay. So after that exercise, I'm going to open up to questions now. So we can, instead of working in the chat, we can work with the Q&A as per usual. Just so that it's just easier for me and Janine to see which questions are coming up. Okay. So if you want to ask about the specific communications that we did today with the lionesses, or if you want to ask a question in general, you're very welcome to. You can see I chose a meerkat for this this page, just so that we could have a bit of variety from all the lions. Okay, it's a question. How do I work with blocks inside myself that may be getting in the way of my communicating? Now that is a very good question, and it's something that I work with my students over quite a long period of time sometimes. And really it is through recognizing what the blocks are. And in my, certainly in my intermediate course, the online course and my more advanced workshops, we really go deep inside of that. So, and asking the animals to help. So, the blocks can be anything from someone who told you that you're stupid and this is impossible when you were a child, or it could be just a fear of being wrong, a fear of responsibility. I mean, we all start out with blocks. So, it is a bit of a process. Some people clear them very quickly and some people take a while longer, but it is something that you can work with and find people that can help you as well, perhaps more, people with the experience. If you want to email Janine, she can tell you the different ways that the courses work and how we support each other through that as well. So thank you. Aldine, what about the elephant sanctuaries in South Africa? So that is another topic altogether as well. And I don't know if you've seen the promo video that Anna and myself did for the animal communication video. We did a communication with an elephant in one of the sanctuaries. And it is very interesting because some of them are genuinely rescued from culls and are treated quite fairly, although they are used, I suppose, for commercial purposes by having people feed them. There's some very dubious qualities about some of them, especially places where you get to ride or walk with the animals, with the elephants. I'd feel a bit wary of participating in one of those, and just because of the way the babies are trained, because it's a very harsh, cruel training to get babies to have people climbing on their backs. So just be aware of that when you come across elephant sanctuaries that are using the elephants for commercial purposes. Do the same method as we did today with the lions, feel in, ask the animals. Okay. Okay. There's a question here about, animals that are in extreme confinement in killing camps and fur farms. Do they shut down or do they escape their unbearable entrapment through, actually leaving their bodies? I suppose that's what you're saying. Actually, I do feel that most of those animals have shut down to such a degree that they don't even defend themselves. You see the most hideous things happening to these incredibly powerful beings, and they do shut down, and it is almost like they've left, their spirit has escaped their bodies. So on one level, I do feel that in order for them to physically cope with the situations, that they do have to leave their bodies. I do believe that. Yeah, thank you for that, Heidi. Okay, Lara, when you go to the zoo, you get overwhelmed by the people around you and by the confusion. How can you block it out? And, Laura, I suppose to say to that, you don't need to go to the zoo. It is overwhelming, and I feel the same way. But we can block it out. You can actually do, if you do need to go to the zoo, you can actually through visualization and intention, put an actual physical boundary around yourself. So either a shield of light, how we do in the meditations, putting a shield of protection around you. And when you are connecting with the animal that you want to communicate with there, see that bubble of light surrounding you and the animal, and keeping everything else out. And that is something that you might have to practice before you feel completely secure in doing that. But what I would rather do, Lara, is maybe go to the zoo once if you want to see the animals, and then work with their photographs, because that is really, I feel, how we can make the greatest difference. Okay. Unless, if you want to go to a zoo to support, because some of the zoos are doing good work, they're not all bad. And so, obviously only go to zoos that are doing good work. So then definitely you need to put the boundaries in place. Okay. Okay, Taylor's saying that he's lost the audio. I don't know, can everyone else hear?
Yes, I can hear you fine, Wynter.
Okay, great. Thanks, Janine. Okay, someone's asking about some contradictions in the messages from the lionesses. And if you actually if you read them through, they were basically all on the, I mean, I'd have to go back and read them because I was just glancing at them. The bulk of it was on the same sort of wavelength. There were one or two that were slightly contradicting, but also remember what we do when we receive information from the animal. We're doing so on a level that we resonate with. So often people communicating with the same animal will receive different messages. It doesn't mean that the messages are completely wrong. It just means that you're resonating with different energy fields in that particular, that animal is giving off. I mean, I speak for hours on the subject, but basically, if there are slight contradictions when working in a group, it's we're not all, and certainly, unless you've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm including myself here, we're not all experts at all the time. We're not all absolutely 100% accurate all the time. So there may be slight contradictions when we're working in a group of people who haven't had the experience. So I hope that answers your question to that satisfaction. Okay, there's a question about animals used in films. Yes, that is also another, and it is sort of the same subject, because most of that wildlife that are used in films are in captivity when they're not being used in the film. So, if you think about, oh gosh, if I, sticking with the subject of lions, when I think about that movie, White Lion, there were hundreds of cubs used in that movie. And, they touted it as saying, oh, it's educating people about white lions and raising awareness. But really, what happened to all those lions? Many of them actually died on the set. And what happened to the rest of them? Because they certainly wouldn't have been put back with their little prides into the wild. They would have been sold or traded or bred with or hunted eventually. So it is questionable about using animals in films, and more people are using digitized animals, sort of animation, which I think is just wonderful. I wish they'd only ever use that. So yes, your concern there, Janine, is right. So thank you for that. Beth is talking about chickens and pigs who just drowned in the floods of North Carolina. I wasn't aware of that, Beth, so I don't know the circumstances. I'm assuming they were factory farmed chickens and pigs. So, there are so many messages from nature that, that tell us that what we are doing with animals is not right. It is just so against what we are supposed to be doing with nature. So that, I'm sure, is a message. How can we help them? Send love, send love to everyone. Do the activism, the sacred activism. Work with prayer and visualization, and do your best to eat ethically and not support factory farming with the coin, which speaks so loudly. Okay, so thank you for all those questions. I hope I answered them all to your satisfaction. Okay, there's a okay, Hattie, you've your questions are wonderfully philosophical. So with man-made laws sentencing animals to killing being the exact opposite to the true divine laws of nature, do you feel we finally have enough sacred activism to cause an upswing back to the restoral of divine order? Heidi, I think, it's hard to know, of course, but I can only hope. And what I'm seeing in my work over the last 20 years, that there is such a change. And whether it's because of the internet and we're all much more aware of what's happening out there, and we can be so much more connected and collaborate so much better, I do think there's hope for an upswing to the restoral of divine order. And that is the work that I'm doing. It's the work that Linda is doing with the White Lions messages and their, restoration of divine order on earth. And, that is the great message that the White Lions bring, according to ancient African tradition as well. So, yes, I do feel that there's hope. So carry on, don't lose hope, and really keep on doing this work. No matter how big or small, you are making a difference just by believing and trusting that we can connect with animals and nature with this divine unconditional love. And just by doing that, you're making a difference. So please know that. Okay, so on that note, let us go into the closing meditation. And I had to put a picture of wonderful Lataba in his freedom with the sun setting. Or it might have been the sun rising in that picture, I'm not sure. But okay, so again, just feel your feet firmly on the ground. Close your eyes and take a deep breath in and slowly breathe out. Take your focus down to your heart space and breathe in that beautiful love and support that you have felt throughout this call. And breathe out the thanks, the gratitude, the joy, the life force of being connected to Source, to the divine energy of nature. And just feel all the experiences that you've had during this call settle into the cells of your body. Discard anything that did not resonate with you, but that did resonate. Remember it in the cells, and use the information for the greater good of all beings, and including yourself. Recognize the powerful transformational energy of joy when you are faced with situations that seem hopeless. Remember that joyful transformation that is beyond the physical, that is beyond the physical suffering, but that can be brought into the physical. That energy of love, absolute unconditional love, that energy of profound mutual respect between other beings, and that energy of transformational joy, the joy of being conscious and aware and connected at this time, at this place, with all these incredible beings who help us in our work, be they on the physical plane, in animal form, in plant form, in mineral form, or in the angelic realms. feel that gratitude and say thank you for all the help. Breathe it in. Slowly breathe it out. Take your focus back down to your feet. Feel the ground beneath you. Become aware of your body, the seat you're sitting on. And slowly open your eyes. Become aware of the room that you're in. And then I would suggest for the next sort of half hour, if you are able, just do something really relaxing. Maybe light a candle. Have a bath if you're lucky enough to be able to bath in an area that is not stricken with drought like we are in Cape Town. Do something quiet and respectful for yourself. Nurture yourself. You've done very good work today. And I just want to say thank you to all your support as well, for following this work and really being here for the animals and for yourself and for the planet. So thank you, everyone, for those of you who have joined live tonight and for those of you that are listening to the recording, thank you. Always to Janine for holding this space so beautifully. Okay, and with that, I think I will say good night and goodbye. So until the next time, thank you.
Thank you, Wynter.
Thanks, Janine. Bye, and lots of love to everyone.
Lots of love to you. Lots of gratitude.
Yeah.
Okay, so just before you take your leave, just to give you my email address and Wynter's website, just so you've got that on the recording if you want to get in touch. And lots of love and blessings to everyone, and see you next time. Bye for now.